Rintaro's story kicks off with a heartfelt confession to his crush. However, despite admitting she likes him, the girl recoils at the idea of dating him, leaving Rintaro utterly devastated. As he trudges home in defeat, his friend tags along, unable to resist poking fun at him. It turns out this is Rintaro's 100th rejection, an achievement so absurd that his friend can't help but wonder how he's managed to ask out 100 girls despite only just finishing middle school. This prompts Rintaro to recall his first ever confession, made when he was a mere 8 months old. Rintaro is desperate to experience what it's like to have a girlfriend, and his friend, baffled by his repeated failures, questions how someone with good looks and excellent grades keeps striking out. This only fuels Rintaro's frustration, but his friend parts ways, wishing him better luck in high school. Still yearning for love, Rintaro visits a shrine, offering a prayer to the god of love, pleading for a girlfriend in high school. Suddenly, a voice echoes from the donation box, and a face emerges from within. The man introduces himself as the shrine's god, spreading his wings as he steps out. He informs Rintaro that not only will he find his soulmate in high school, but he's actually destined to have 100 of them, giving him no shortage of options. Overjoyed but skeptical, Rintaro makes a bold threat. If this prophecy turns out to be a lie, he'll personally see to the shrine's destruction. Fast forward 1 month, and the first day of high school arrives. On his way to the classroom, Rintaro accidentally bumps into 2 girls, Inda and Akari. The moment their eyes meet, an electrifying jolt runs through them, leaving Rintaro wondering if these 2 could be the soulmates the shrine god had promised. As he reaches out to help them up, Akari suddenly clutches her ankle, dramatically claiming she's injured and requesting his assistance to the nurse's office. Overwhelmed with guilt, Rintaro immediately bursts into tears, devastated at the thought of harming his destined partner. Akari, however, finds his exaggerated concern endearing. Just as he steadies her, Inda, unwilling to let Akari have all the attention, dramatically follows suit, insisting that she too has twisted her ankle. Without hesitation, Rintaro blames himself and starts hitting his own head for hurting them. The girls, startled by his extreme reaction, instinctively stand up to stop him, only to realize they've just exposed themselves. Realizing their mistake, they quickly resume their act, pretending to be injured once again. Rintaro proceeds to escort them to the nurse's office, though somehow, it feels more like he's the one being carried. As they walk, the girls lose their balance multiple times, leading to a chaotic scuffle over him, both clinging onto him for dear life. Amidst the disorder, Rintaro introduces himself, and in turn, learns that they are all in the same class. As they reach the nurse's office, 2 other girls pass by, chatting about a courtyard full of pink leaf clovers. According to them, if someone confesses while holding a pink 4-leaf clover, their confession is guaranteed to be accepted. Upon hearing this, Inda and Akari instantly bolt away at full speed, leaving Rintaro dumbfounded. Weren't their legs supposed to be injured? Hours later, long after school has ended, Rintaro stays behind, assisting a teacher in searching for a missing contact lens. As Rintaro prepares to head home, he wonders if he'll run into the girls again. Just as the thought crosses his mind, he spots them in the courtyard. Inda is hunched over, scanning the grass, clearly searching for something. Curious, Rintaro approaches to check on her progress. Caught off guard, Inda jumps and immediately scrambles to act casual, pretending she wasn't just looking for the legendary 4-leaf clover. Noticing that Hikari isn't around, Rintaro offers Inda a drink. At first, she hesitates, too flustered to accept, leading Rintaro to assume she must find him weird since they barely know each other. But before he can dwell on it, Inda suddenly snatches the drink from his hand, insisting she'll finish it all so it doesn't go to waste. Amused, he tells her she should head home since it's getting late. Inda glares at him, refusing to be bossed around, but then quietly thanks him for the drink. That's when it hits Rintaro. She's a classic tsundere. Without warning, Inda dashes off, and moments later, Hikari returns. Rintaro offers her a drink as well, but Hikari has a different idea. She suggests they share it, aiming for an indirect kiss by claiming she can't finish it on her own. Anticipating this move, Rintaro smugly presents her with a smaller bottle he bought just for her. Unfazed, Hikari doubles down, insisting that even the smaller one is still too much. With a sigh, he agrees and takes a sip first before handing it to her. However, the second Hikari reaches for it, she panics, fumbles the bottle, and spills the drink all over the ground. Rintaro, completely missing the real reason for her reaction, assumes she must be upset because she really liked that drink. To make up for it, he offers her his handkerchief to clean up, but instead of taking it, Hikari grabs his hand instead. Heart-pounding, she confesses her love to him, saying she had to do it quickly because there's someone else who likes him too. Rintaro is overjoyed, his first ever confession, but before he can even process it, Inda suddenly reappears. Just as Rintaro is trying to process Hikari's sudden confession, Inda bursts back onto the scene, her arms full of drinks. She had gone out of her way to buy them as repayment for the one he gave her. But the moment she sees Hikari asking him out, her expression shifts from surprise to irritation. Scowling, she tells Hikari to get in line, making it clear she isn't about to let her skip ahead. Rintaro freezes, stunned. Wait, does that mean Inda likes me too? Inda immediately tries to backpedal, fumbling for an excuse, but the pressure mounts until she finally cracks. Gritting her teeth, she begrudgingly admits her feelings. Now both girls are standing before him, awaiting his response. Without hesitation, they demand to know who he's going to choose. Sweating bullets, Rintaro stalls for time, telling them he'll give them his answer tomorrow. But as the night drags on, he racks his brain, completely unable to make a decision. Both girls are incredible in their own way, and no matter how much he thinks about it, he just can't choose between them. Desperate for guidance, he returns to the shrine and calls out to the god of love. The winged deity emerges from his donation box yet again, and Rintaro frantically explains his dilemma. But instead of helping, the god drops an even bigger bombshell. Both Inda and Hikari are his soulmates. There's no choosing between them, because they're both meant to be with him. Confused, Rintaro asks what people normally do when they meet more than one soulmate. The god shrugs and casually informs him that most people don't have multiple soulmates. Sensing something is off, Rintaro presses him further, until the god sheepishly confesses. Apparently, when Rintaro was born, the god had been distracted watching TV and accidentally assigned him 100 soulmates instead of just one. Rintaro feels his soul leave his body. He's doomed. But before he can even begin to process this divine blunder, the god delivers the final nail in the coffin. If a person isn't with their soulmate, they die from heartbreak. In other words, if Rintaro doesn't find a way to be with all 100 of them, they won't survive. His nightmare is only just beginning. The thought of either Inda or Hikari dying because of his decision only makes Rintaro's dilemma worse. But then, an idea strikes him. What if he rejects both of them and secretly dates them behind each other's backs? It seems like the perfect solution, until he realizes he's way too soft-hearted to actually pull it off. By the time morning rolls around, the girls meet up with Rintaro, only to find him looking absolutely wrecked, as if he had spent the entire night wrestling with his own emotions, which, to be fair, he had. Mustering his courage, he finally gives them his answer. He wants to date both of them. Inda is floored, barely able to process his shameless confession. It turns out that, in the end, Rintaro just couldn't bring himself to lie to them. He comes clean. He loves them both and swears to do everything in his power to make them the happiest girls in the world. The girls are seconds away from rejecting his insane proposal. But before they can, Rintaro suddenly pulls out 2 pink 4-leaf clovers. As it turns out, he had spent the entire night searching for them. Inda scoffs, calling him an idiot for believing in such a ridiculous superstition. But Hikari quickly reminds her that they were the ones who believed in it first. Inda stubbornly refuses to accept being two-timed, but Rintaro explains that he didn't get the flowers to manipulate them into saying yes. He just saw how hard they were looking for them, and he wanted to make them happy. The girls completely short-circuit. Hikari, too flustered to resist, caves first, deciding that two-timing with Rintaro would be far better than getting rejected altogether. Inda refuses to let Hikari steal him away, so despite all her complaints, she gives in as well. Hikari immediately teases her for changing her mind, while Rintaro swears to cherish them both. But in the back of his mind, he can't help but wonder, what about his other 98 soulmates? The next morning, Rintaro is overwhelmed with happiness, finally experiencing what it's like to have a girlfriend. Unfortunately, he's so lost in his joy that he ends up expressing his excitement to a pole. When the girls arrive, Inda stares in horror, questioning why exactly he's whispering sweet nothings to an inanimate object. Rintaro, unfazed, says he was just too happy to contain himself. Inda, embarrassed but trying to be cool, tells him that if he needs someone to talk to, she's right there. However, the second she realizes what she just said, she turns beet red and completely shuts down. Hikari takes full advantage of the situation, grabbing Rintaro's hand without hesitation. He's instantly overwhelmed by the sensation of actually holding hands with a girl, and Inda, not about to let Hikari get ahead of her, quickly grows jealous. Without thinking, he reaches for her hand as well. Inda puts on her best, not impressed face, but the three of them happily walk together to school. As soon as they arrive, chaos erupts. A boy is sprinting through the halls, with the school's vice principal hot on his heels. Hikari quickly explains that the vice principal is notorious for enforcing school rules, especially when it comes to running in the hallways. If she catches a student breaking the rule, she doesn't just scold them, she kisses them as punishment. Rintaro watches in horror, thinking that would be actual emotional damage. Hikari, clearly enjoying his reaction, adds that the vice principal is a former star sprinter, meaning that no one has ever escaped her clutches. Then, out of nowhere, she changes the subject, turning to Rintaro with a playful smirk. By the way, she asks, have you ever kissed anyone before? Rintaro, still trying to recover from the mental image of the vice principal chasing students down with kisses, blurts out the truth. No, he hasn't. They're his first ever girlfriends. The moment those words leave his mouth, both Inda and Hikari freeze. It suddenly dawns on them, whoever acts first gets his first kiss. And neither of them plans on losing. During lunch, the three spend time together. And while Inda gets momentarily distracted by a cat, Hikari takes the opportunity to sneak an egg roll into Rintaro's mouth. The taste is so good that he literally starts crying, overwhelmed by the flavor. Inda, instantly jealous, refuses to be outdone. She reveals that she also made something for him, homemade cookies. However, her attempt to feed him is significantly less graceful, as she ends up accidentally jabbing him in the eye. Despite the minor assault, Rintaro eats the cookie anyway, praising it as amazing. Before Inda can bask in the moment, Hikari pulls out a Baki snack, but as she opens it, she realizes that both ends have already been broken off. This creates a dilemma. How can she feed him without getting her hands dirty? The answer? She feeds him directly from her mouth. As Hikari leans in with the snack between her lips, Rintaro finds himself utterly mesmerized. She's way too cute. Sensing his reaction, Hikari playfully bites down on the snack, inching even closer to him. Inda, noticing his reddened eyes, suddenly grows concerned, thinking he might be coming down with a cold. However, rather than offering logical solutions, she grabs onto him, confidently declaring that the best way to recover is to pass it on. In other words, she's about to kiss him. Hikari isn't having any of it. She quickly blocks Inda, arguing that they can't be sure he even has a cold yet. Instead, she proposes a more scientific method, checking his temperature through lip contact, claiming it's a family tradition. Inda, not about to let Hikari get the upper hand, takes a more aggressive approach. She decides that knocking Rintaro out and giving him mouth-to-mouth would be far more efficient. Hikari, horrified, immediately shoves her away. The two girls glare at each other, completely at odds. Meanwhile, Rintaro, still reeling from everything, finally realizes the truth. They weren't concerned about his health. They were just trying to kiss him. Inda immediately denies it, but her guilty expression makes it painfully obvious. Rintaro, despite his usual denseness, is stunned. They actually want to kiss him? Rather than panicking, he surprises them both by offering to do it himself, admitting that he's been wanting to kiss them too. However, the moment is quickly shattered when Hikari points out the major problem. He has to choose who he will kiss first. That, of course, sends him into another heated argument. Before things escalate further, Rintaro stops them, saying that he already came up with a solution. In fact, he had spent the previous night thinking about it because he was just that excited. After much deliberation, he devised the perfect plan to keep things fair. For his first kiss, they will never know who was kissed first. That way, they'll both have an equal chance at being his first. In his heart, he'll consider each of their kisses as his first. The girls are understandably skeptical. How could they possibly make it a mystery? That's when Rintaro lays out his plan. Step 1. He wears a mask. Step 2. They cover their ears so they won't hear who gets kissed first. Step 3. They roll a dice to randomize their standing positions. Step 4. He kisses them without knowing who is who. It's foolproof, or at least it should be. To ensure complete fairness, Rintaro adds another step. After the first kiss, he'll return to his original position, and the girls will once again randomize their places. That way, by the end, even he won't know who he kissed first. Hikari immediately loves the idea, but Inda remains suspicious, wondering if there's a way for him to cheat. Rintaro, as if anticipating this, unveils his ultimate safeguard, a pinky promise. Inda is unimpressed, calling it the dumbest solution ever, but Rintaro solemnly swears that if he breaks the promise, he'll stick a needle in his eye. Faced with his absolute conviction, the girls reluctantly agree, and the plan is set in motion. However, just as they prepare for their first kiss, disaster strikes. A sudden gust of wind lifts Inda's skirt, and at that exact moment, the stray cat from earlier decides to latch onto it, its claws sinking into the fabric. Inda naturally assumes the worst. Thinking Rintaro is the one touching her, she instinctively kicks him into oblivion. As he lies on the ground, dazed and confused, Inda furiously continues pummeling him. It's only when her headphones slip off that she realizes the truth. The real culprit was the cat. Feeling guilty, but not guilty enough to apologize, they decide to try again. Unfortunately, fate seems to have a personal vendetta against Rintaro's first kiss. Every single attempt ends in catastrophe. By the time their plan has completely fallen apart, everyone is frustrated. Inda, in a huff, declares that the entire idea was flawed from the start. Hikari, insulted, fires back, and before long, they're full-on fighting over who Rintaro actually belongs to. Rintaro, completely overwhelmed, does the only thing he can think of. He takes all the blame. He blames himself for being too inexperienced, too reckless, and ultimately for causing them to fight. Then, without warning, he sprints away. However, in his moment of blind panic, he makes a huge mistake. He yells out for the vice principal, and she immediately appears. Rintaro freezes in terror as the legendary school enforcer pins him down, ready to dish out punishment for daring to run in the halls. Just as he prepares for his untimely demise, Inda rushes in and stops her. Hikari, ever the schemer, quickly pretends to see a school inspector in the distance. The moment the vice principal hears this, her entire demeanor changes. Panic-stricken, she scurries away without a second thought. As the dust settles, the girls demand to know why Rintaro acted so recklessly. He takes a deep breath and confesses. It's because he loves them. Not just one of them, both of them. And if them fighting is the price of his first kiss, then he'd rather throw it all away. Hearing this, both Inda and Hikari suddenly grow quiet. Then, in perfect unison, they turn to each other and say the same thing. You can kiss him first. Rintaro stares in shock. After all that fighting, after all that chaos, they're both suddenly willing to give up their chance? But as he looks at them, he realizes something. They're both smiling. They finally understand. They really, truly love him. Rintaro pulls both girls into a tight embrace, a sudden idea forming in his mind. With a hopeful smile, he proposes something bold, a three-way kiss. At first, Inda and Hikari freeze, their faces heating up as they realize what that actually means. Kissing him was one thing, but kissing each other? That's a whole different level of embarrassment. However, after a few exchanged glances and hesitant nods, they both finally agree. And so, after all the chaos, the three finally share their first kiss. The next day, Rintaro and the girls find themselves in the library. Hikari eagerly searches for a cookbook, determined to make even better meals for Rintaro. Inda, however, spots a book titled "The Way to a Man's Heart is Through His Stomach" and immediately grabs it. Rintaro slips away to explore the library on his own. As he scans the bookshelves, he unexpectedly bumps into another girl. The moment their eyes meet, a familiar shock runs through him. His heart skips a beat. Could she be another one of his soulmates? Before he can say anything, the girl takes a step back. Rintaro soon realizes she's the librarian. She doesn't speak a word, but instead flips open a small book, pointing at specific phrases to communicate. At first, Rintaro is a little confused. Does this mean they're not allowed to talk in the library? The girl tilts her head, then writes, "What book are you looking for?" Not wanting to break any rules, Rintaro tries to mime out that he's looking for a funny story. The girl watches his awkward gestures for a moment before calmly flipping her book to a new phrase. "Why aren't you talking?" Rintaro blinks. She hesitates for a moment before apologizing, then turns to leave. Before she can walk away, Rintaro gently stops her. He insists that she's the one he wants to help him. When he asks for recommendations for a romance story with a good ending, the librarian nods and starts pulling books from the shelves. Rintaro waits patiently, but his eyes widen in horror when she finally turns around, holding an enormous stack of books. His soul leaves his body. The girl, noticing his shock, quickly apologizes, telling him he doesn't have to take all of them. But Rintaro, not wanting to waste the effort she put in, declares that he'll take them all. With a proud smile, he confidently walks up to the checkout counter. And then, his library card gets denied, so he's unable to borrow any of the books. Feeling defeated, he prepares to put them all back. But then, the librarian does something unexpected. She offers him her own personal book. Rintaro is genuinely touched by the gesture and gratefully accepts it. Before he leaves, he realizes he still doesn't know her name. The girl silently pulls out her ID card and holds it up. Her name is Shizuka. That night, Rintaro sits in his room, carefully flipping through the pages of Shizuka's book. The story follows a princess and her loyal knight. The knight vows to protect her, even risking his life to fend off a fearsome dragon. Over time, their bond grows, and they fall deeply in love. However, their happiness is short-lived, because the princess is already engaged to another prince. The knight rushes toward the princess, desperation in his eyes, wishing for any way to defy the cruel fate that keeps them apart. Rintaro finds himself rooting for them, completely absorbed in their struggle. But just as the tension peaks, the story ends on a cliffhanger. Frustrated, he slams the book shut and vows to get his hands on the sequel. The next day, Rintaro eagerly approaches Shizuka, thanking her for lending him the book. To his surprise, she wordlessly hands him the second volume. His eyes light up with excitement as he accepts it, but at the same time, he realizes he needs to repay her somehow. Determined, he buys her a drink, and the two end up talking about the book outside. Shizuka tells him that it's her favorite book, and Rintaro is impressed by how well she knows it, since she can always find the perfect phrase from it to communicate. She admits that she's just relieved he doesn't find her weird, revealing that she's never had a real friend. Hearing this, Rintaro suddenly gets an idea, asking if he can borrow the first book again. A few days later, Shizuka brings the third book for Rintaro, but he never shows up. As time passes, she starts to wonder if he's lost interest. While walking around the school, she spots him with Hikari and Inda. They notice how exhausted he looks, and when they ask him about it, he says he's been busy at night. The girls exchange glances, wondering what he's been up to, but Rintaro just lets out another yawn. Hikari suddenly kisses him, saying she's transferring her energy to him. Rintaro immediately hugs her, calling her an angel, while Inda, not wanting to be left behind, insists that she has plenty of energy to give as well. She leans in to kiss him, but somehow ends up headbutting him instead. Shizuka watches from afar, realizing that Rintaro already has a girlfriend, or rather, two. She starts to feel like an outsider, recalling how others have always found her strange because of the way she communicates. Even her own mother begged her to speak normally. She convinces herself that someone like Rintaro has no time for someone like her. But just as she's about to leave, Rintaro suddenly appears in front of her, saying he's finally ready to repay her for the books. He helps her install an app on her phone, revealing that he has painstakingly typed out a digital copy of the first book by hand. She's stunned, knowing that an official ebook version of it doesn't exist. Rintaro explains that while she communicates using the book, she's always looking down at it, never making eye contact with the person she's talking to. With this app, she can select phrases and have them played out as a voice, allowing her to look at people while speaking. He tells her to give it a try. Shizuka hesitates before pressing a phrase, and the app plays out, "I love you." Her face turns bright red, and she quickly shakes her head, frantically selecting another phrase to take it back. Rintaro, however, simply smiles and tells her that he loves her too. Shizuka insists that their fates are against them, but Rintaro confidently declares that they'll overcome it, no matter what destiny says. He takes her to meet the other girls, introducing Shizuka as his newest girlfriend. Inda is on the verge of losing her mind, questioning if he's completely insane, but Hikari simply thanks him for staying with them, even after meeting someone new. Rintaro reassures his girlfriends that his feelings for them haven't changed in the slightest, making a strange but oddly fitting analogy. He compares them to an oil field, vast and overflowing with value, while Shizuka is simply a brand new, undiscovered field. Adding her doesn't diminish what they already have. If anything, it just means there's more to cherish. To prove his unwavering devotion, he boldly declares that if he ever fails them, he'll atone with seppuku, even going so far as to order a ceremonial knife off Amazon. Inda stares at him in disbelief before eventually accepting the situation, and just like that, Rintaro's harem gains another member, only 97 more to go. Later, Rintaro shares his observations about Shizuka with Inda and Hikari, pointing out a peculiar, yet adorable mannerism she has while reading. He explains that she moves her toes like a puppy wagging its tail, revealing her emotions without even realizing it. Then, turning his attention to Hikari, he casually mentions that she has a habit of biting her fingers when deep in thought, before confessing that he finds it incredibly attractive. Without missing a beat, he shifts to Inda, noting how she twirls her hair whenever she tries to brush off a compliment, and he finds it absolutely adorable. The girls are taken aback by how much attention he's paid to their little quirks, realizing just how much he genuinely cares about them. As he continues, he starts describing how Inda and Hikari act while kissing, but before he can go into too much detail, Shizuka suddenly stiffens. It dawns on her that he's already kissed them, and she struggles to process it. Hikari, ever the instigator, wonders aloud if Shizuka is also interested in kissing, but she quickly shakes her head, explaining that she's saving her first kiss for marriage. Rintaro, ever the gentleman, assures her that he's completely fine with waiting until she's ready, while Inda and Hikari exchange knowing glances, silently daring her to change her mind. During lunch, the usual chaos unfolds. Inda gets increasingly frustrated as Hikari refuses to let her feed Rintaro, escalating into a competitive food-shoving match where they both end up stuffing his mouth full. Meanwhile, Shizuka quietly eats her own meal, watching the ridiculous scene play out. Rintaro, noticing how reserved she still is, wonders if she just needs time to adjust to the group. He reflects on how people tend to put up a front when they first meet someone, afraid of how others will react to their true emotions. But once someone already knows how you feel, there's no longer any reason to hide. And perhaps, just maybe, Shizuka will reach that point with them soon. Rintaro suggests playing a card game with a fun twist. The loser gets tickled by the winner. He believes that laughter is the ultimate way to break down walls and get people to reveal their true emotions. In his mind, a tickle battle is the perfect bonding exercise, ensuring that by the end, they'll all be closer friends. However, the girls, each imagining what it would feel like to have Rintaro's hands on them, secretly hope to lose on purpose. The first round ends with Rintaro as the winner and Inda as the loser. Rather than being upset, she seems oddly pleased with this outcome. He starts tickling her, and though she tries to put up a fight, she eventually collapses onto the ground. But just as he's about to continue, he notices something off. She's enjoying this way too much. Slightly unnerved, he pulls back. Moving on to the second round, Rintaro wins once again, with Hikari as the unfortunate, or in this case, very fortunate loser. She beams with excitement, knowing she's about to be touched, and as soon as he starts tickling her, she bursts into laughter, clearly loving every second. However, things take a turn when she suddenly begs him to stop, claiming she's just too ticklish. The truth, however, is much more humiliating. She was dangerously close to wetting herself. Rintaro dominates the third round as well, leaving Shizuka as the next victim. He eagerly anticipates this moment, curious to hear how she laughs, but when he starts tickling her, she remains eerily silent. Instead, she calmly uses her device to play out the words, "I'm laughing." He stares at her, both confused and utterly charmed by how adorable she looks. This only encourages him to keep going, while Inda and Hikari look on, realizing with horror that Rintaro has yet to lose a single round. Determined to turn the tables and get their revenge, they become laser-focused on winning. Finally, Shizuka manages to secure a victory in the fourth round, and for the first time, Rintaro is the one who has to be tickled. She steps toward him, and rather than going in for an all-out attack like the others had, she simply pokes him. To everyone's surprise, this alone is enough to make him start laughing. Hikari watches this unfold, confused as to why Shizuka isn't taking advantage of the opportunity to feel him up. The realization suddenly hits her. Rintaro is drawn to Shizuka's timid nature. While Hikari has always flaunted her best features to capture his attention, she now sees herself as an imposter, a cheap trickster compared to the effortless charm Shizuka possesses. In her mind, Shizuka isn't just another rival. She's an even bigger threat than Inda. After the game, Rintaro heads to the bathroom, giving Inda the perfect chance to corner Shizuka. She cuts straight to the point, letting her know that she's fully aware that Shizuka has been keeping her distance from Rintaro. Shizuka tells them she's just a newcomer, so she doesn't want to get in their way. But Inda isn't having it, reminding her that she's Rintaro's girlfriend now, so there's no reason to hold back. She bluntly tells Shizuka that her timid behavior is annoying. Flustered, Shizuka immediately apologizes, which only makes Inda even more irritated. She demands to know why Shizuka won't fight back. Finally, Shizuka opens up, admitting that she's scared. She explains that Hikari has an irresistible charm, and Inda carries the confidence to match her beauty. In comparison, she feels like there's nothing special about her, and she's terrified that Rintaro will eventually start comparing her to them. Instead of pushing her away, the girls find themselves growing fond of her, thinking she's adorable. But Shizuka still doesn't believe she belongs. Hikari reassures her, saying that Rintaro clearly sees something special in her, otherwise he wouldn't have accepted her as his girlfriend. Meanwhile, Rintaro watches from a distance, satisfied that his plan worked out even better than expected. Earlier, when Shizuka was poking him, he noticed Inda glaring at her, and for a moment he thought Inda wanted to pick a fight. Instead of interfering, he decided to let them work it out themselves, hoping it would help Shizuka open up. Seeing the way they've handled the situation, he's proud of all of them. Returning to the group, Rintaro is immediately ambushed by Inda, who insists that Shizuka should tickle him again since she was holding back the first time. Hikari joins in, encouraging Shizuka to go for it. Realizing they're trying to help her break out of her shell, she decides to take their kindness to heart. Instead of tickling him, she boldly steps forward and tells Rintaro that she wants to kiss him. Taken aback but pleased, he leans in and they share their first kiss. Shizuka turns red with embarrassment, but before she can even process what just happened, Hikari jumps in, requesting a kiss of her own. Though she's usually confident, she finds herself wondering if she's truly good enough for him, especially compared to Shizuka. But Rintaro shuts down her doubts immediately, telling her that he loves all of his girlfriends. Hearing this, Hikari's insecurities melt away, and he kisses her as well, leaving her beaming with happiness. Then, turning to Inda, he playfully asks if she wants a kiss too. She scoffs and pretends she doesn't care, but her body betrays her as she subtly shifts into position. Amused, Rintaro calls her out, saying she looks adorable when she's flustered. Embarrassed, she unleashes a barrage of punches on him, but he tanks them with a smile. Finally, she mutters that she does want a kiss, and he happily obliges. As he holds them all in his arms, he can't help but think he doesn't deserve such amazing girlfriends. But to his surprise, they tell him they feel the same way about him. The next day, Rintaro enters the classroom and runs into a girl named Nano. He casually mentions that the exam results have been posted, asking if she plans on checking them out. But Nano just shrugs, saying it's a waste of time. She already knows she's secured the #1 spot. As their eyes meet, a strange, electrifying sensation shoots through Rintaro, and he immediately realizes what this means. She must be one of his soulmates. Later, he checks the results with his girlfriends, and they all did well on the exam. But when he looks at the #1 spot, he's stunned to see that Nano didn't just get first place. She scored a perfect 100 on everything. Curious, he asks the girls about her. They tell him that she's a complete nerd, someone who can answer any question thrown at her without breaking a sweat. In fact, there's even a rumor floating around that she isn't human. During biology class, Rintaro gets paired up with Nano, and he immediately notices that she's unlike any of his other girlfriends. Her elegance is on a completely different level. However, as he observes her work, he quickly realizes that she's not actually solving the problem. She's just copying the answers straight for the textbook. When he points it out, she dismisses his concern, saying that practical exams are a pointless exercise. According to her, the scientists who wrote the textbook already figured everything out, so there's no need for her to waste time doing it herself. Rintaro warns Nano that the professor is watching, so she finally leans into the microscope. But instead of actually observing the specimen, she flips open her textbook and reads from it, claiming it's the more efficient method. Rintaro watches in disbelief, slowly coming to terms with the fact that she might actually be a robot in human disguise. As he attempts to slice the specimen, he accidentally cuts his finger. With a sigh, he moves to rinse it off, considering a trip to the nurse's office. But before he can even take a step, Nano grabs his hand and, without hesitation, puts his finger in her mouth. Rintaro short-circuits. Panic sets in, but Nano remains unfazed, calmly explaining that saliva contains natural disinfectant properties, making any additional treatment unnecessary. As Rintaro struggles to process what just happened, Inda, who has been watching from the side, looks absolutely livid. After class, Rintaro thanks Nano for helping him, but she bluntly tells him she wasn't trying to be nice. She just needed him to stay and help her clean up. Slightly put off, but still intrigued, he asks if she'd like to hang out with him sometime and get to know each other better. Nano, ever the pragmatist, dismisses the idea instantly. Rintaro argues that having fun is the meaning of life, but Nano simply tells him he's delusional and that he's already wasted enough of her time. For the first time, Rintaro genuinely starts to doubt if she's really his soulmate. That night, in her room, Nano finds herself thinking about Rintaro. Confused and annoyed by her own behavior, she starts to analyze the situation. She realizes that she has feelings for him, but instead of embracing them, she views them as an obstacle, a distraction from her usual efficiency. Desperate to clear her mind, she begins writing out the exact value of pi, believing it to be the most logical method to regain focus. However, as she fills an entire board and stacks of paper with endless digits, she finds that it's not working. Frustration sets in as she acknowledges that she's wasting time, an unacceptable development in her world. The next day, Nano approaches Rintaro and, with absolute certainty, tells him that she's in love with him and wants him to be her boyfriend. Rintaro, caught completely off guard, is thrilled, only for Nano to immediately reject him. His excitement screeches to a halt, leaving him utterly bewildered. She explains that she only confessed so she could put an end to her feelings. To her, romantic relationships inevitably lead to marriage and pregnancy, making teenage love entirely meaningless. She assures him that she will never go out with him. But Rintaro isn't one to back down. He stares her straight in the eye and tells her that he's in love with her too, and he refuses to give up. Determined to show Nano that love is meaningful, he drags her along on a date, though she remains completely unimpressed. She sees no point in their activities and even questions why they're doing this in the first place. As Rintaro pulls out an instant camera, she examines it with mild disgust, pointing out that it's an outdated device with no data retention, making it inherently flawed. Unbothered, Rintaro grins and tells her to say cheese. She blinks in confusion, asking what he means, but before she can get an answer, he snaps the photo anyway. Their outing takes them to a haunted house, where Nano, in her usual monotone manner, states that she does not believe in ghosts. As various actors jump out to scare them, she doesn't even flinch. She calmly explains that they're just regular humans, wondering why Rintaro is acting so scared. After assessing the situation, she reaches a logical conclusion. This place isn't a haunted house. It's a human house. As they ride the giant teacups, Nano sits in silent contemplation, wondering what kind of lunatic designed such a ride. She fails to understand why people willingly line up just to get spun around like laundry in a washing machine, concluding that it must have been created as some sort of brainwashing device. Their next stop is a massive maze, where they repeatedly run into dead ends. Nano, unimpressed, questions why the designers didn't just build a direct path to the exit, thinking that the whole concept needlessly complicates the customers' lives. When they reach the Ferris wheel, Nano suddenly reveals that she is afraid of heights. Surprised but empathetic, Rintaro sits beside her, offering silent support. As the ride progresses, Nano begrudgingly admits that she had fun, though she still insists that their entire day was ultimately pointless. Rintaro, taking her words at face value, pulls out the photos they took and casually suggests burning them. If the day was meaningless, there's no need to keep any reminders of it. He moves to set them on fire, but before he can, Nano's eyes widen in realization. If he destroys the photos, the memories of the day will be erased forever. The camera doesn't store data, meaning this is their only record of what happened. Without thinking, she snatches the pictures from him. Rintaro smirks knowingly, telling her that she was afraid of losing them because she actually gained something valuable today. Overwhelmed by this truth, Nano starts crying, finally understanding that joy, no matter how fleeting, makes life meaningful. She uses his handkerchief to wipe her tears, then, as if catching herself, reassures him that she'll disinfect it before returning it. Rintaro, half expecting her to use her saliva again, braces himself, but she casually clarifies that she'll just wash it. Then, with newfound resolve, she tells him that she wants him to be her boyfriend, not because of some logical analysis, but because she genuinely wants to create more meaningful moments with him. Rintaro, moved by her words, tells her that he loves her too. Without hesitation, Nano kisses him, declaring that she will fulfill her desires by any means necessary. Later, Rintaro introduces her to the rest of the girls. Surprisingly, they don't object to her joining the group, prompting him to once again swear his ridiculous promise. If he ever fails them, he will atone by committing seppuku. However, Nano, ever the pragmatist, coolly suggests that poison would be a far more effective option. As they discuss their next outing, Hikari immediately protests that it's unfair Rintaro went to a theme park without her. To make up for it, she suggests a trip to a water park, excitedly pushing for the classic beach episode experience. Meanwhile, Inda struggles to choose a swimsuit. She spots one that catches her eye, thinking it looks cute, but doubts it will suit her. However, she considers the possibility that Rintaro might like it. So, after some hesitation, she decides to buy it. At the pool, Rintaro is instantly overwhelmed with happiness at the sight of his girlfriends in swimsuits, feeling as if he could die content on the spot. However, his joy is cut short when Inda appears, not in a swimsuit, but in an unusual dress that completely hides her figure. Panic sets in as he wonders if she forgot to bring one, or, worse, decided to skip swimming entirely. Inda nonchalantly tells them that she's feeling cold, so she'll just sit by the poolside while they have fun. Nano directs Inda to a sunny spot where she can warm up, prompting a grateful thanks from Inda, who assures her there's no need to worry. However, Nano bluntly replies that she doesn't care about her well-being. Instantly irritated, Inda snaps at her to go away. Inside the whirlpool attraction, Shizuka helplessly spins in circles on her floater, completely at the mercy of the current. She calls out that she has no control over her direction, but no one seems particularly concerned. Meanwhile, Nano assesses the situation with her usual cold logic, concluding that the whirlpool is actually a training ground for survival scenarios. Without hesitation, she attempts to swim against the current, until Rintaro, ever the voice of reason for once, stops her. As chaos ensues, Hikari latches onto Rintaro, claiming she's about to be swept away. Pressing herself against him, she takes full advantage of the situation. Nano, seeing her move, decides to do the same. Unfortunately, the sheer intensity of the moment proves too much for Rintaro's heart, and he promptly passes out. Nano immediately checks on him, noting with alarming calmness that he isn't breathing. Hikari, never one to waste an opportunity, declares that drastic action is needed, and proceeds to give Rintaro mouth-to-mouth, enjoying every second of it. Nano, not about to be outdone, shoves Hikari aside and attempts to revive him herself. However, Hikari insists that her method isn't working, dramatically declaring that Rintaro is on the brink of death. Meanwhile, on the other side of the pool, Shizuka continues her silent struggle, still unable to control her movements. She tries to get out, but the whirlpool has other plans. Realizing she's genuinely stuck, she attempts to call for help, only to be completely ignored. Her floater suddenly gives out, forcing her into a panicked scramble out of the water. She finally manages to reach safety, only to find herself stranded on a tiny artificial island in the middle of the whirlpool. Back to the Rintaro crisis, Nano suggests the most rational course of action, finding a lifeguard. The girls take off, but along the way, they attract unwanted attention from a group of men lounging nearby. Hikari ignores them, but one of the guys, captivated by her figure, reaches out toward her. Before he can make contact, Nano intercepts him and efficiently pokes him in the eye, explaining in her usual monotone that this is the most effective way to neutralize a pervert. The rest of the group isn't too happy about this, and they step up to intimidate Nano. Staying calm, she offers a deal. She'll go with them if it means giving Hikari the chance to escape and find help for Rintaro. In her mind, ensuring Rintaro's happiness means keeping Hikari safe, so she's willing to make the trade. However, Hikari isn't having any of it. She refuses to leave Nano behind, reminding her that Rintaro also cares about her. Another guy attempts to grab Hikari this time, but before he can, Rintaro, miraculously very much alive, steps in between them. In a firm voice, he declares that Nano and Hikari are both his girlfriends. The man, unimpressed, tells Rintaro to mind his own business, insisting he can take one girlfriend and leave. But Rintaro repeats himself. Both of them are his. The guy scoffs, not believing him for a second. If he's really dating both, then he should prove it by kissing them on the spot. Without missing a beat, Nano immediately kisses Rintaro. Hikari follows up, doing the same, and then turns to the men, proudly confirming that Rintaro was telling the truth. The entire group is shaken. They suddenly realize they are dealing with something far beyond their comprehension, a true gigachad. Deciding it's best not to mess with someone on this level, they quickly back off. As the situation settles, Hikari looks at Rintaro, baffled. How did he recover so quickly? Meanwhile, elsewhere, Inda, who had witnessed the incident from a distance, had initially rushed toward Hikari and Nano to help. However, along the way, she stumbled upon Rintaro's unconscious body. Her first thought? That he was already dead. Rintaro jolts awake as Inda urgently tells him not to die, explaining that Nano and Hikari are in trouble. With renewed determination, he leaps to his feet and rushes to their aid. Once the dust settles, he thanks Nano for protecting Hikari, but she assumes that Hikari is more important to him. Rintaro corrects her, telling her not to put herself in harm's way, making her realize that he cares about her just as much. Then, it hits him, Shizuka is still in the pool. Panic surges through him, knowing she can't swim. He dashes to find her, while she struggles to get anyone's attention. As her phone's battery dwindles, she suddenly hears Rintaro calling her name. She desperately waves, but he doesn't see her. Swallowing her pride, she lets out a high-pitched scream, something she never wanted anyone to hear. Immediately, Rintaro locks onto her location and sighs in relief, grateful that she's okay. He scoops her up, only for her to kiss him on the spot, causing him to blush as he reminds her that they're still in public. Reuniting with the group, Rintaro announces that he's taking a break and asks Inda to join him. As they sit together, he notices her glancing at Hikari and Nano, realizing she might be comparing herself to them. Suspecting that she lacks confidence in her swimsuit, he reassures her that she and Shizuka are both completely normal. Inda, however, argues that Shizuka is different, small, and adorable. Without warning, Rintaro pulls off the dress she's using to cover herself, revealing her swimsuit. She immediately calls him a pervert, but he's too captivated, telling her she looks stunning. Hugging her, he lets her feel his racing heartbeat as he tells her that she's perfect just the way she is. Deeply moved, Inda finally joins the others in the pool, and they all enjoy the rest of the day together.